Hi, folks. It's Bob Vetter here. Before the podcast starts, I wanted to offer you something for free available on my website, www.bobvetter.com. It's a download of a game and map of the healer's journey called Sustos, named after the traumatic events that can lead to soul loss. The game provides insights in how we ourselves can be healed and how that process empowers us in our healing efforts with others. Get your free download at www.bobvetter.com. Now, let's get to our latest podcast episode. Greetings, listeners. I'm here today with Maria Krause. As a spiritual mindset and alignment mentor, Maria teaches and empowers entrepreneurs in how to share their unique stories to heal, inspire, and make a bigger difference. Her work consists of helping women understand themselves through their stories, peel off the layers that no longer serve them, and create a soulful alignment in all areas of their lives. Now, I should also tell you the way that I know Maria is that I was a guest on her podcast, which is called Unchain Your Inner Strength. And it was such a pleasure being on her podcast that I invited her to be on mine. So welcome, Maria. So nice to have you here.
Thank you, Robert, for having me. I love doing this. And I'm on the other side this time.
Exactly.
Such a pleasure.
So Maria, please, if you would, share a little bit of your story with us. How did you
Okay.
get to do this?
How did I get to be where I'm at today? Oh my God. I think we all go through life through different experiences, adventures, mistakes, lessons, everything. And then we suddenly find ourselves going like, what did I learn from that? Can I do something about this? So this is basically how I ended up where I'm at today. Like everybody else, I have a story. And I think it was the moment that I wrote mine that I realized how I could help others. And that was through my last relationship. I was 36 then. I'll be 43 next week. So it's been a while then. I got together with somebody who I thought it was like, okay, this is it. This is the love of my life. And little did we know that was my biggest breakthrough in my life. It was a very toxic relationship. I fell into depression. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of self-destruction as well on my behalf. I was just going down this road and I didn't know where to run. So I just like dived deep into self-destruction, drugs, alcohol, you name it, I was in. And for the beginning was a lot of emotional abuse. It was a lot of verbal abuse. And there was something inside me. There was my instinct telling me to run, but there was another part of me that years later I realized it was my ego holding me back. I'm like, yeah, no, you have to try to work on this. You have to make this better. You have to, like, it's your fault that this is not working out. But once I fell into depression, there was no way out. And the first time he hit me, I stayed. The second time I was gone. I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I found my way out of that relationship. At the moment we were living in Ireland, I was living in Ireland. So I'm originally from Argentina. Got a one-way ticket home, packed my little bags. I'm like, I'm going away for a little while. So I came here for 6 months and it was sort of a rehab, Bob. That's what I would call it. I know how people go to rehab. I put myself into rehab, but without going into an actual facility. Coming home meant, okay, it was, sobering up, cleaning, basically leaving all drugs, leaving everything that I knew until then. I'm like, okay, we have to change. Something has to change. We can't keep living that life. Especially, as I said, I was like in the state of depression and self-destruction that I didn't care what happened to me. I could have died the next day and I really didn't care. So once I came home, I'm like, okay, let's start doing the things that we used to love to do. So I start going for long walks. I grab my journal again. I start, writing the things that I was angry about. First, it was the things that I was angry about, what was frustrating me. And I started getting everything out. And was getting up early in the morning. I was going back and eating healthy. And like I said, it was a lot of walks and a lot of going back into nature and a lot of going back to myself, that person I once was. Because I don't know if any of your listeners have ever been in a toxic relationship or in any relationship that, they can't be themselves. That could be in a job that you can't express who you are. And then you lose track of who you are. You don't know where the you for the society is and where the real you is. So that time that I came home, that's what I did. I went on a journey to try to find my way back to my authentic self. And that's what I did. And ever since then, I remember when I started my business, I'm like, well, I'm going to teach this to women. I didn't think it was a big thing, I didn't think journaling, telling your affirmations, going out for walks, it would be such a huge thing. And then when I went into self-development and working with coaches, they all kind of give you that, this is how you start. So that's pretty much how my business started, as a mentor, as a mentor. So I started as a transformational coach, and then I moved into mindset and alignment that I'm doing now.
To mindset. Okay, so can you explain the difference between a transformational coach and a mindset mentor?
Well, like what I did, transformational, for me, the word transformation, as I went in through my journey, I found there's always this idea of us being broken, of us we have to become, we have to become and we have to transform. And I think, I honestly, after all these years, I think that we have to unbecome, and we have to become more, all those things that we unlearn them. Our truth self is there. The core of who we are is within us. But as I said, sometimes situations, like going into school, you have to act a different way. Going into a job, you have to act a different way. Try to fit in this society makes us become something different. So that's why transformation for me, it was that. It was like having to transform yourself into this other thing. And I'm like, no, you don't. You just have to find more of who you are. Mm-hmm. So that's why I went into more of alignment and mindset, because I really believe like the way we speak to ourselves is how we determine how we feel and how we, how others see us as well, the way we talk to ourselves. And it's.
Now, I'm a little curious about how it is that you came to work just with women.
Okay. Because of what I had gone through, and I'll be absolutely honest, I had a lot of anger towards men at that moment. There was I had to work a lot on that, but also because I always worked with men. I always worked I worked as a bartender. I worked as a waitress. I always worked in men. What do you call it? Environment.
Yeah.
In a men's environment. And I've always been very, very active. I've been very, if somebody tells me do this, I'll do X, Y, Z. I give more than I usually do. And for some reason, being a woman and being able to tell them that you don't like something, that means you're crazy or you have an attitude. So that was always my problem at work. So I will never get the higher jobs. I will never ever get the bigger jobs because of my attitude. Meanwhile, the guy that I used to work with used to do half of the job that I used to and always end up with the higher position and bossing me around. So I thought there was a huge imbalance there. And I think now things are they are balancing little by little, because women are speaking up. And this idea that we are speaking up, it's not because we're crazy or because we have an attitude or because we're a bitch. It's because we actually have something to say and we want to be heard. So that's the reason, Mob. That's the reason. First, it started because of that, really resentment towards men. And then it turned into this thing that I'm like, no, it's not their fault. It's not particularly one person's fault. It's this how society has been built for so many years, from donkey years. And slowly but surely, we are starting to change it, but I have to do it from my point of view. I can't blame somebody else for how I feel about that. So, and I want women to feel that way as well, that there is safe for them to speak, it's safe for them to, raise their voice, it's safe for them to be in a situation, because usually when, something happened with a male, women feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, no, it's time that they feel uncomfortable by what they said or the way they looked at us or, the way they act. Not always us. Like, we always feel like we are responsible for certain things. Or our skirt is too short, or we're showing our cleavage, or all those kind of things. So I want women to be to own that they're women. That it is safe to be. We're safe. I say safe. That will be safe eventually to be.
So, do you think that there's a big difference in the spiritual path to healing that a woman in general goes through compared to a man?
I could not say, because I never worked with men, so I wouldn't be able to say it to you. I can say from personal experience how I perceive, like, friends of mine, that male friends who have done the work, who are doing the work, compared to women who are doing the work. And I still feel like they still try to mansplain you what a spiritual journey is. But like I said, that's my own personal experience with the people that I had interacted with. So I think there's still that big ego that is now suddenly, now I'm in this journey, so I know more than you do, And I'm like, yeah, I agree to disagree, but it's an argument that I don't get into anymore. I did at the beginning, but now I'm like, okay, if it makes you feel better, then I'll do it. But this is, like I said, Bob, this is an experience that I went through. I can't speak for, I want to believe that there's people out there that really do the work, and I don't know how the difference would be.
Okay, so let's go back to the difference between transformation, which is changing what you are from A to B, as compared with clearing away the stuff that is placed upon you that is keeping you from expressing your true self. That, if I get you correctly, that seems to be like your central thesis. Is that right?
Yes. Well, like, I believe that knowing who we are, we can pinpoint what is really ours. Like, I think our fears, let's say, for example, our fears. A lot of our fears are not based on something that we fear, but are based on something else, somebody else passed on to us, Like, okay, the fear of success. Why am I fearing success? It's like, because my parents told me I'll never be successful. The fear of not being loved. Why am I fearing not being loved? Because my parents told me that. Or I'm just putting your parents an example. This could have been like the little kid that pulled your hair when you were in second grade, and like told you that, and like those things. But I think a lot of the stuff that we carry with us, they're not necessarily ours. I had this big breakthrough the other day. I was telling a friend about it. And I was like, for my whole entire life, I had been asking my family to accept me. I've been doing this. I have been in business for 4 or 5 years almost. They don't see it as business. Even when I have my 2 bestseller books, it was like, okay, whatever, They don't see it as an
bury the lead for us, Maria. What are your 2 books?
I have 2 books. I have 2 book collaborations and both bestsellers. But I'll tell you that about now, Bob. But my parents never seen it. My family doesn't see it like an accomplishment, So my whole entire life, I've been trying to, like, do the monkey dance in front of them to accept me, until I realized the other day that I could not ask somebody who does not accept themselves to accept me. So I'm asking something to somebody who doesn't have it. It's like, it's just that emptiness. So it's just going to a vending machine and trying to get chocolate out, and the vending machine is empty. So it's like, I have to let that go. That's not my baggage anymore. It doesn't belong to me anymore. I have to give it back.
So our parents, our teachers, our friends are projecting onto us the limitations that they feel.
I believe we do. I believe we all do. and it's not like something that we do necessarily, consciously. I think it's something that somebody else passed on to us, and we just keep bringing it on until we realize you're like, okay, this is not, why is this happening? Why is this pattern continues to happen? And like, how can we stop it? And I'm not saying it's like parents, but I think it's like the people that we most look up to. There's somebody there that you really look up to, and it's like, and that you're really seeking for their, approval and attention, and that person is not giving it to you. And that's when you try your hardest, and I think a lot of us do that, try your hardest, try to do. A lot of people end up going to college and going for a degree that I absolutely hate, but just because their parents is like, oh, let's make proud our parents, or things like that.
I'm also thinking in the spiritual world, how many people become disappointed in their gurus. They turn to a guru as a person that they put up on a pedestal. And all of a sudden they find out that that person is all too mortal. Now there are so many documentaries about things like that. I'm thinking of the one most recently about St. John of God that I started watching. What a disappointment he was to all of his, not all, but a lot of his followers when they found out exactly what he was doing. And so many others. Now, I don't mean to pick him in particular, other than to say that I just saw the documentary the other day. But it seems like when we put somebody up on a pedestal like that, that we are setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's, I won't say a problem, but I think that's something that we need to address. It's like nobody, it's more than we are. We are all equal. And I think we've been doing this for years. I mean, there were the gods, back in the days, there were the gods, then there were the princes, the queens, the kings. There's always somebody, and we put that out there. It has happened to me, Bob, when I was younger and I was living in New York. I met some of my favorite rappers. And when I met them, I was like, it was such a disappointment. I was like, they're horrible people, absolutely horrible. And I was like, yeah, I'll never. And I remember ever since I was 21, I was like, this is the last time I put somebody on a pedestal. Of course, my mother was a different thing, but everybody, it's that belief that we have that somebody is either smarter than us, prettier than us, they're more capable than us, and they're not. I mean, it's all about effort and wanting something that we achieve what we want, right? But in the actions, and either you're spiritual, you're not spiritual. I think that's what it is. But going back to what you said with spiritual, I think he wasn't the only. I think there was a few more that it was like they portrayed this whole spiritual thing. Meanwhile, they had like a whole garage of like thousands of like Rolls Royce, and I don't know how many Rolexes. I can't remember who was it. I think he was Brazilian. But there's, putting always somebody on a pedestal. At the end of the day, they bleed like we do, they cry like we do, they have to eat like we do. They're humans.
Exactly. All right, Maria, so let's switch gears for a moment, and I would like to ask you about something that would be helpful for our listeners from your practice, from what you do and what you share with the fortunate women who get to work with you every day.
Thank you. Speaking of that, spend less time learning about other people and spend more time learning about yourself. Because I think this is very important. I find friends telling me like, oh, they know everything about the Kardashians. And then I ask them something about them and they wouldn't know, like, what do you prefer? Like oat milk to almond milk? And they're like, well, I'm not sure. Is there a difference? And I'm like, well, yeah, it is a difference. Did you have the chance to actually know yourself to know that there's a difference? But it's that I think people consume so much, and that putting people on the pedestal, putting people on the altar, thinking that everybody can do it, but you can't do it. And I think that I always tell my clients, I was like, write your story, write your story. And even if you never publish it, just be able to sit there and realize all the things you have accomplished. Even the things that you think are your weaknesses, they might be your biggest strengths. Being empath, being an introvert, extrovert, all those things are beautiful, beautiful qualities in a person. We have to be able to accept them, understand them, and know how to use them, and be okay with it. But I would say, like, get to know yourself. Spend less time scrolling on social media and, and try to know everything about everybody else, and spend more time learning about you.
Now,
And
since you do work with people, one of the things that we discussed off air before the recording was your work with other people who are writers, helping them to write. Can you tell us what is unique in your work about how to draw out a person's own story?
okay, I help people become writers. These are women that are still want to share their story. What I do, well, how can I tell you what's unique about working with me? The fact that you spend time with me. I have an amazing team of women that work with me, all best-selling authors as well. One of them is a 7-time best-selling author. She's the project manager. Then it's myself. And this is what I was just saying before. When you get to know yourself, you get to realize the amazing things you can achieve. 3 years ago, I didn't think I was going to be able to publish a book. I knew I wanted, I started writing. And then when I said it to them, I was like, let's do a book all together. The response was quickly, yeah, let's do it. And I learned so much from that experience, and I absolutely love it. And I know I can guarantee women to go like become bestsellers, but that's a plus when you work with me. That's not my aim. I want people to really share their story, because it's not about the 6-7 figures. It's not about entrepreneurship. It's about the experiences you go through life to get you where you are today. And I think that's what people relates to, that they know that you're human, as again, that you cry, that you bleed, that you eat, that you drink, that you shit, that you sleep, all that kind of things. And I think that's what it relates to people. And those are the books that I like to create. I like books that are raw, they are simple to read, they're them in their full voice telling like, this is what happened to me. And whether it's, as I said, it's like I had women sharing stories about abuse, child abuse, women sharing stories about their problems with alcoholism. And they're all women in business now, and that's what they're helping other women with,
So
what they're
let's
going
say that
through.
I have something that I really consider to be a weakness in my life. How, in a nutshell, do I change this through my writing? I don't mean change the circumstances. I mean, we might use the term reframe in order to
Yeah.
make something out of my experience. So what do I do with that? What do I do with the trauma in my past in the way that I write it?
Well, that's the two things, because it's, let's say, like you said, weakness, I use the word victim, because there's also the thing that happened to you, and you can write it from a place of victimhood, or you can write it a place from empowerment. And it's the wording, it's the way you how you feel about yourself as well. I had a writer that she wasn't ready to share the whole story of what happened to her. So I was like, if you don't have to. We share the part that we heal, and the part that we are not completely healed, I wouldn't advise people to share it yet. It's because it will come across like that. I had a client that this is how she started. She was like, oh, everybody hated me when I was a kid. And I'm like, you can't say that. That's the example you're looking at. And like, you cannot speak from the point of view of other people. I'm like, that's how you felt. So we're going to write it on the way that how you felt. Why did you feel that people hated you? She was like, well, everybody looked at me funny. And I was like, well, why do you think they looked at you funny? Were you dressed differently? Were you acting differently? Did you speak a different language? Were you biracial? All those things. And we go from that point of view. Okay, this is how I felt. But throughout that, okay, how has helped me as well? How has that made me help me become stronger, wiser, maybe even kinder, because I wouldn't treat other people the way they treated me? What is it that I've learned from that experience? And what you have considered to be a weakness or a place of victimhood, it suddenly turns into this empowerment place. Because at the end of the day, there's no one else like you who has gone through that, right? You're just a unique, beautiful person. And because you're still here telling that story, that makes you even more powerful. Oh, and that's the beauty of it. I get teary talking about this.
And that's beautiful. That is a tale of empowerment.
Thank you.
So, Maria, first, what are the books that you wrote? Because that wasn't in your bio.
No, it was I sent you a short bio. It was like, oh, when I have to do my bio, I'm like, oh my God, where we start. So as I mentioned, I started the podcast where you were a guest, Sancheño Strength. Right after the podcast, I started a magazine. And then from the magazine, we started the books. So it's everything under the same company. And the books, I always have the writers, the co-writers, choose the name. I would say, we'll do it all together. I want the cover, everything, to do it all together as a team. And it happened that everybody chose that. They were like, Unchain Your Authentic Soul was the first one. And Unchain Your Inner Warrior was the second one. So it kind of became a series now. So now the third one is starting on September 27th. But there's stories, as I said, Rob, they're raw stories, the real stories of, women going through the deep depths of loneliness, heartbreaks, self-doubt, all that kind of thing, pain, and then just flourishing into going back to their authentic selves and being the women they were always born to be.
So how do our listeners get in touch with you?
Podcast. You can find me on podcast. You can find me on my website, www.mariackrause.com. And I'm pretty much at Maria C. Krause, and I hang out more on Instagram now and TikTok. If you want to come, I don't do the funny dances, okay? So don't expect me that. I just have little chats with the audience in TikTok. But yeah, that's all I'm at. And Unchain Your Strength, the podcast.
So let's go through the spelling of your website. Maria C. Krause, MariaCkrause.
Yes. Yeah. The reason I put the C in between, so it's just my mom's last name. So I had to give her a little shout out. I'm like, okay, when I could do that in the business, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't for her.
And she deserves a little thanking.
Yeah, she does. Absolutely.
Well, let me thank you, Maria, for a wonderful little bit of time that we got to spend together today. And it's nice to be on both sides of the microphone with you. So I want to thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Bob. It's been a pleasure. Love chatting with you. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Before you go, I wanted to remind you of free healing resources available on my website, www.bobvetter.com.
This has been Healing and Spirituality in World Cultures with Robert Vetter. Thanks for listening. Please rate, subscribe, and share with everyone you know who might benefit from these messages. Until next time, remember, be kind and loving to yourself and others. Together, we can heal ourselves and help build a better world.